jpmorganchase interview questions for a Java developer. First of all, my name is Arun. I'm working for one of the MNCs, and recently I attended for a jpmorganchase interview. This interview is a little different from compared to other companies. It can be it's each role of the each role will be different in within the JPMC. I think it has the huge demand of the Java developer roles within the JPMC, and so we can apply online JPMC site in career site and search for the location and role as a huge demand for Java development roles. Definitely you will get a call within 15 days, or if you have any sufficient, if they need any sufficient information, they will respond you back to provide the information. Definitely they will get a call. So I have attended for a few of the roles, and this is one of the best role ever, giving them all the questions about this one of the role. Okay, and this interview process is a little tricky when compared to others, and it has many stages. It can be a 2-step or 3-step or 4 stages or 5 stages as well. So for me it is like around 3 stages. So one is technical discussion, a second is a technical coding test, and the third one is a final stage. So it can be, it not necessarily the same thing for each and every role. It can be different from different roles. Different for the interview process will be different for different roles. So I'm going to explore about some of the one of the role which I have attended. It's just divided into the few set of questions like Java 8, Spring, and Google Cloud, application resilience, and Kubernetes, and finally coding test. For the coding test is the next stage. So they will give me the half an hour time to finish this coding test. The first question says about the JDK version which you work in. So they may ask you some questions about the version you worked in, and why, and core Java questions. The first question is why the string class, why is immutable. So we can say that a string is immutable, and this string letters are created in common pool and a string object created in a heap, and it is that's why this is string designed to be immutable. It's immutable in the sense is the contents is cannot be modified, it's not change. So why this Java made this the content shouldn't be changed? So like the this made it as a string, as a special class to make it the threads safe. The string objects should be thread safe. What is the created object for a string? It should be thread safe, and once it is changed, never change. Um, if the any thread accessing the same multiple threads are accessing the same string, the contents are never changed. If the one thread try to modify the content, thread try to access the same content. If you try to modify the content, a new object will be created. The old object cannot be changed at any time. This is make very good thread safe. And also another why we need to explain this why what is the different reasons to make the string immutable. So for security reason, like a passwords, usernames, and connections URL stored in a string object, because the contents never change. If you want to try to change the password, the new object will be created, the old object will be remain same. It's not that, but I mean to say the contents never change. It try to create a new password, a new object will be created. So that's why this string is a special class for a Java. The second question is about HashMap. It's like how HashMap is working internally. So the interviewer asking the question about how it works internally. So I've explained in a way like what are the basic methods and how it works. HashMap is a part of a Java collection framework. It is uses a technique called hashing. So the hashing helps them, like the hashing means like the process of converting the object into the integer value. The integer value helps in indexing and fasting the searches. So basically it stores the key value as a pair, and it contains an array of nodes, and each node is represented as a class. It is just like a single linked list kind of a structure data storing the key value. It contains 4 values, like a key value what we are showing visible to her, and int hash is it internally stores, and node key value next. The next is a kind of a reference for the next node. So mostly like 3 important things, two important methods as part of HashMap, that is equals. It checks the equality of the 2 objects and compares the key whether they're equal or not. It is a method of the objects class, but it is overwritten, and if the override equals method, it is a mandatory override for a hash code method. A hash code method is again the objects is a method of the root class object, root class, that's the object class. It returns a memory reference of the object in an integer form. That value will be help us to use it for a bucket number, and the bucket number is the address of the element inside the map. Buckets, what you mean by bucket is an array of nodes called buckets. Each node has a data structure like a single linked list. Okay, so if you take it as a bucket, how the bucket will be like a node one node, I mean to say it is node 0. It starts from 0 1 2 3, node 0, node 1, node 2, node 3, and each node will have a key value, and the next is a kind of a reference to the next node. So all references will be there in the third value. So whatever we can see is a key value here, but the next node reference is tagged to the next value. So based on this, it's like a single linked list data structure kind of thing. And calculate the index, like index is equal to hash code of the particular key and n-1. So where is the size, based on the size of the array and the index value, it calculates the index value and point to that. And if there is any collision, and it will be overwrite. If there is any collision, the key object is used to calculate the index of the bucket. By using this key, the hash value is calculated using the hash of key. It is a private method of HashMap. So the way it calculates is an index, and then pick up the value, look up the value based on the index. The fourth question is about the deadlock, how it happens, and if it happens, how you're going to resolve it. So basically, the deadlock in Java is a condition of 2 more threads try to access the same resources at the same time. So deadlock arrives when these threads, like more than 2 threads are accessing this and save resources at the same point of time and never come out of the stage and went to the waiting stage. So that state we call as a deadlock state. It means this lock happened when accessing the resources. So to resolve this, we need to avoid this unnecessary locks. Like we can have a lock only those numbers which is required. Having lock unnecessary can lead to the deadlock. So we need to be only lock the particular who is very particular resources. And the second thing is the thread dot join. The deadlock condition appears when the thread is waiting to finish, and if the condition occurs when you use the thread dot join, the maximum time of execution will take. So once this maximum time is reached, it come out from the loop thread. Using lock ordering, always assign the numeric value for each lock before acquiring the lock with higher numeric values. Acquire the locks with a lower numeric value. So like based on this values and the priorities, we can give the high numeric value for each of the locks. So by doing that, we can avoid the deadlock. Lock timeout. We can also specify the time that the thread to acquire the lock, and if the thread does not acquire the lock, the thread must wait for a specific time before retrieving acquiring a lock, so that we can avoid the deadlock when the timeout happens. The fifth question is about what are the new feature. So first of all, they will ask you like what kind of Java version you're using. So if you are using 7, they may ask the questions about the 7. If you you are using Java 8, they may ask the questions on Java 8 relevant stuff. So the few questions, there are many things, but so they have asked only the selected questions on the Java 8, and so the first thing is like what you like, or what is the important Java 8 features. So I explained this whatever I remember at the time, like for each method, a default and static interfaces, functional interfaces, and lambda expressions, Java Stream API for all these bulk load operations and collections, Java Time API, collection API improvement, concurrency API improvement, Java IO improvements. So these are the new features, and also these are the new ones. So they again they may ask you about this lambda expressions, why they lambda expressions or introduces as part of Java 8, and the big thing we need to understand, like from Java 8 onwards, we introduce for lambda expressions to simplify the development and coding as part of functional programming rather than object-oriented programming. That's the main fundamental point introduced as part of Java 8, that they may be expecting that like why lambda expressions are introduced, why streams are introduced, even though we have a lot of collections and collection interfaces, but why they introduce the stream API. So they have all there may be some questions about the streams as well. Next questions, they jumped into Spring and Spring Boot. The first question they ask like about the few annotation that you implemented as part of your project, and you as like first I've explained like about repository. It's a class level annotation, and it's a repository mechanism for encapsulating storage, retrieval, and message behavior. So it's directly interact if you write any Pojo kind of thing directly. If you put as a repository, it's a directly interacting is a database records. So it's helpful for storage, retrieval, and such behavior, which emulates basically it's a collection of objects. The second thing is a request mapping. It is used to map the web request on specific handler classes and is applied to the controller. So the controller is kind of one of the stage as part of a Spring Boot architecture. So we write as a controller classes. So the request mapping can be applied to the controller classes as well. component scan annotation. Basically, Spring needs the information to locate and register all the Spring components with application context when application starts. So the component scan, which scans the basic packages and attributes which specify the which packages should be scanned for a decorated bins. So in case if you are mentioning it and if you're not able to find this all the packages relevant to this when the Spring application starts, it throws exceptions like is unable to scan the packages kind of exception comes from the Spring. Request mapping. So basically, this is used to map the web request onto the specific handler classes and methods. It can be applied to the controller classes as well as the methods. So it's find out and routing the particular web request. It's helpful for routing the web request. You can also mention like additional method level annotation to make mappings more specific to the handler methods. The next question is about how to disable a specific auto configuration of the class. So for generally this to enable this auto configuration, use this annotation called enable auto configuration if you want to enable the auto configuration of all the Spring classes and packages. But if you want to exclude any packages, a class name, and we can mention like enable auto configuration, exclude and specify the class name. So that auto configuration will not be applicable to a particular class. And the next question is about actuator. What are the different kind of actuator used as part of your Spring Boot in your project? So I just explained a few things like health, info, beans, mappings, config probes, HTTP trace, HTTP dump, HTTP dump shutdown. So these are the I should be able to explain it. Health is like just take a health. It explains the health of the application when the application is running or not or shutting down anything. So it checks the health value. So before checking that, we just used to ping the server whether the server is up or up and running, application is up and running. Info, it gives us Spring info like how many beans or objects has been created by Spring Boot application, Spring application context. Beans, how many beans are being created, and the mappings. It also gives a list of mappings, what is the mappings has been configured. So like that, these many so actuators provides a kind of help which help to monitoring the Spring Boot application. The next question is about can we create a custom annotation? Yes, absolutely, we can create a custom annotation. And how can we create it? So they may ask. So annotation basically is a form of metadata, right? So this I can like marker annotation, single value annotation, and multi-value annotation. So marker annotation is like something like we have a called like a serializable class, which is a marker interface, which is just like a marking. It doesn't have anything in the interfaces. It's a similar way. So there's a marking annotation inside which no variables are declared and defined. It's like a marker interface. And the second one is single value annotation. These are the annotation inside which has only single value, and multi-value means you have multiple values. Implementation of first we are looking for implementation of no variable custom annotation. So just declare this at ref interface and give the employee data. It gives us like a syntax at the interface annotation name. That's a syntax. And it's the same thing you use here, like at the rate of interface employee data. And it's a no variable, so because it's a no variable custom annotation and class employer. So this way we can so that this all the metadata comes, it belongs to that, it comes to the employer class. It is the same way. So interface employee data, and this is a single value declaration, and use the single value declaration here. So it prints here. Yeah. So now it's a multi-value different multi-value custom annotation, and you can create a at the rate of interface employee data, employee number, name, salary, class employee. So you can use this custom annotation here for this class, employee class. Now the questions is about Kubernetes. Basically, Kubernetes is for a container orchestration. So, container orchestration means like the like a list of containers. Break the things into chunks of your application regarding whatever the hardware that runs on the code. So it means that basically the container is responsible to run the code and execute application and just handle the request and responses. So these requests may, based on the cluster, they may redirect or which nodes which it needs to pick it up. So redirection, rerouting, and handling all the request in a efficient way. All is called as like container orchestration. So the Kubernetes will take care of the container orchestration. So we don't need to much worry about it, and we have efficiently creating a Kubernetes cluster. And it's also open source. It's not a single host provider. It can be available for any cloud provider. They may ask us about the nodes, like what is a node, what is pod. So basically, nodes lives in the Kubernetes cluster corresponding to a single machine, and the pods are a group of containers that acts as a discrete units of functional that can be given for a node will run. So it's like pods or the group of container is created under node, so that within the node they can access as like a local host. They want to access any pod, so they can access with the local host. Just so you no need to be no port is required for it. So that's why what are the pods they have created, they can access easily with the local host, like a local host. And Kubernetes engine. So Kubernetes engine is also a open source system, and it is helpful to reroute the request, the which node need to be picked up, which pod need to be picked up. So it helps to the right nodes, and also to minimize the burden, and you need to be used minimize the burden for a Kubernetes, which the clusters in Kubernetes. The Kubernetes clusters allow the applications to be run more easily, developed, move, and manage. So it helps us to move this, reroute the request like multiple servers, so that the efficiency will be increased. So it's comprised of master node. Master node is the main responsible for everything, and the worker nodes is which is responsible for individual service which deal with this related to the application. These nodes can either a physical computer or a virtual machines, depending upon the cluster, whatever we defining it. And master node controls the state of the cluster. So we'll show in the diagram. Next slide. So we can see the cluster here. Master node, node 1, node 2, the customer pod, product pod. Here the different pods we have created here. And so this is a product service responsible for all the product pod, and customer pod is responsible for customer services. So all finally reporting back to the master nodes once this request has been completed. The next question is about the application resilience techniques. They may ask indirect questions like what is the different techniques you have applied for application resilience techniques. Application resilience techniques, it means that to withstand the failures despite of the system is in the region or system is not available. So we have to be withstand our failures and redirect or and irrespective of the architecture, irrespective of the environment, infrastructure, network, whatever. So the application failures to be we withstand the failures. Services available in different regions and zones across the globe. So basically, when a cloud services you deploy in a different regions and zones. So if in case one region is not available, and there's the application request should be able to redirect to the different zone, which is next available zone, which can quickly access the application so that we can withstand the failures of the application. And the second one is to manage this cloud cluster can be distributed. It means that to the available regions, like based on the cluster environment, we should be able to distribute the traffic to available zones and regions. Compute engine, regional persistent disk or synchronous, replicated across the zones in a region. And the load balancing options to manage the traffic that we discussed before, including the global load balancing, and can direct traffic to healthy region to closest to the users. So it will be yeah, just the traffic should be redirected to the next available zone. Serverless platform, which included to manage to compute and database products. Serverless platform is like lambda expressions we can use to write some small functions to do the specific work, like a microservices. We don't need to depend on everything on the server to handle it. So you don't need the server is like it means like highly it should be highly available every time, and it should be like when it's starting and stopping we can avoid is the runtime and critical time of the business. So if you deploy the small thing like small write a small functions and deploy as a lambda expression, so the function, so and run basically we can write or a small function with the javascript or node.js, whatever language we prefer, the programming language we prefer. We can write a small functions and execute it, so it don't need to be dependent on the servers. So that's a Google provides as a very good very good feature for without serverless component we can define for AWS it's providing by lambda lambda functions. We can write them small components on it. And the database products that can offer a built-in redundancies like Azure also provide Azure SQL, MongoDB, and MySQL also is a built-in redundancy for a Google Cloud platform. The load balancing. So load balancing is ELB. Amazon also provide Amazon ELB, like elastic load balancing, and Google cluster also Google also providing a cluster environment. Um, so each vendor will be providing in a different way of handling this load balancing. And also the cloud, all the cloud supports the CDCI Jenkins pipelines to continuous deployment and continuous integration. So Jenkins is the best tool to implement, basically need to implement and deploy the application, implement the pipeline and deploy the application into Jenkins. Again, the Jenkins we can deploy into our virtual machine as a service. And the cloud monitoring, it provides like metrics, apps, infrastructure, helping you to provide data-driven decisions, any performance, health of your application. A few of them has is already provided. If you take it to the Google App Engine, it provides the built-in, everything is provided as part of the app engine, so you don't need to worry about it. But if you deploy as a service into the into this virtual machine. So you need to be take care of the metrics like logs, and each environment specific infrastructure, and how much is the CPU taking, and how much the performance is taking, database performance. So everything you need to be considered and you have to be taken out. So all the metrics has to be basically the cloud provides all the metrics. So you need to implement all based on your requirement, like what kind of metrics is required for your application. So is a flexible, the many tools provided cloud, so which you need to just integrate. You need to be explaining like how you are going to be integrate your tools into the for to getting the logs metrics for your application. Monitoring all levels, like first gathering all the metrics of various levels across the architecture, and provides the it provides the basic holistic picture of your app health and behavior. So it means that if you based on the metrics, so we can compare the weekly data, monthly data, or yearly data, and peak non-peak data. So based on the metrics, so and we can uh, try to increase the more load, but Kubernetes cluster will take care of it. But just for our monitoring purpose, we can have metrics ready and gather all the metrics. Based on the metrics, we can conclude like what action can be taken based on the metrics. Infrastructure monitoring is about to like about the CPU load, memory usage, and the number of uh, data that will return to the disk. So like how much time is taking, any issues with writing the disk, any delay, any lag, any latency between them. So just all this can be captured in infrastructure monitoring. App monitoring is also to capture the app level metrics. It means that it like measure how much time but if you take as a database query, how much time it is taking a query, and how long how long it's the service is performing, and service is taking means service start call and end call, how much time it is taking, the calls between start of the service and end of the service. Each start of the service and end of the service may have the queries, then lots of queries will be running, and so we need to measure this. But there are different tools available in Java, and also the cloud also provides the best way of to providing the logs, cloud logs based on the environment. Uh, so we can monitor this logs as well for application monitoring logs. Service monitoring, if the microservices driven projects, so it is important like the interaction between the different services and components of your application, and these like is it interacting with other applications, like how long it is taking, and whether it is able to connect or not, it's able to ping the other services, able to interact with the services, or call the service each other or not, so or any errors are throwing. So these are the service monitoring can be done, and also it can be have any latencies, any timeout, or any network issue. Everything can be monitored here as part of the service monitoring. The next phase of interview is a coding technical test. If they sometimes they may have a different round and a different day, or they can have a giving some time or 15 minutes of time on the same day. So it depends on the project interviewer and the interview panel. So in my case, it's like they're giving me half an hour time, and then you need to perform and complete the coding test. So this is they have given the input type equal. This is the input, and we need to print the sequence of like the continuous sequence, like 1 2 3 6 7 8 -3 -2. So it includes 0, negative numbers, and positive numbers. It can be any number of the input. And also we need to take care of any uh, uh, non-numeric parts also. So if you are entering in non-numeric parts, special characters, so they need to deal the special character as well in our code. So I'm going to show this coding technical test how I did it in a next session, and so hope you got some insight about the interview of the jpmc, which type of questions they will ask you. So hopefully you like this video or understand. If any clarification, any further clarification, please comment, and hopefully I can answer it as early as possible. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you.